Okay, let's learn tonight in the merit of the safety of the Jews in Israel from rocket attacks, from murderous evil doers. Okay, Parshas Behar-Bechukosai. Start at the beginning. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe Behar Sinai lemor. Hashem said to Moshe at Mount Sinai, saying, interesting, we're not learning now about the giving of the Torah, but the Torah here is mentioning Mount Sinai. So what does he say? What does the Torah say? Daber al bnei Yisrael v'amarta aleim. Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, Kisavu el haaretz asher ani nosei lachem. When you go into the land which I will show, that I will give to you, v'shavta haaretz Shabbos l'Hashem. You shall have the land rest, and it will be for a Shabbos for Hashem. So it's talking, of course, about the mitzvah of Shemitah. Every seventh year, we are not allowed to work the land in Israel, and the land must lie fallow.
Do we collect the crops and eat it?
You're allowed to eat things, but you're not allowed to harvest it and stuff like that.
Shemitah.
What? Shemitah, right. So now why are we talking here? Bahar Sinai. Why are we mentioning Mount Sinai? So Rashi points this out immediately. Ma inyan Shemitah leitzil Har Sinai. What does Shemitah have to do with Mount Sinai? Well, all the Torah was given at Mount Sinai, so why single out Shemitah? So Elamash Shemitah Nemru Klal Yosef Pratoseh V'Dikdeh B'Sinai Avkula Nemru Kloseim V'Dikduhehem B'Sinai. Just like Shemitah, the general laws about Shemitah and the particulars of Shemitah were given at Mount Sinai, so too all the laws were given at Mount Sinai about all the mitzvahs. Sometimes we just forget. If you just read the Torah, it sounds like the written Torah, that, oh, look, it was just the 10 commandments that were given at Mount Sinai. But we don't realize that all of the 613 commandments and all of the details were given at Mount Sinai. So that's why it says Shemitah next to Mount Sinai. It's an important thing to remember. Okay.
Can I ask a question? You know how, what is it called, Cohen's get what is it called, the 10%? What is that word called?
Truma.
So what about the Shemitah? Can the Cohens get the produce 10%? Does that apply or no?
I believe it's ownerless. Anybody can take it. Okay. Now there's an interesting thing that the Torah says about Shemitah. Page 700, 2520. Chaf Hey Chaf. Maybe you will say, what am I going to eat in the seventh year? We didn't plant, and we didn't collect, we didn't gather in our crops. Sounds like a decent question.
Yapchik.
I wonder if they had yapchik in the times of the temple. You never know. I will send my blessing in the 6th year, and I will give you grain for 3 years. Now, if you think about it, that's quite a fantastic claim to make. Right? If you were, let's look at the psychology of the Torah here. If you wanted to make your own religion, and you wanted to make a promise, and you're making up your religion and it's fake, what kind of promise would you make to get people to join your religion?
Paradise.
It would have to, paradise, because heaven, all that. Why? Because, when people die, they can't come back and tell us what happened. You can't verify if the promise that I'm making is accurate. All right? So if I'm making a religion, I'll say, yes, if you join my religion, you'll go to heaven, you will get all the yapchik you can eat, and have the biggest big screen TV, and play video games all the time, and it'll be the best, most enjoyable heaven ever. Prove it to me. Can't prove it. Only people who've died and gone there. There's no way to verify it. So if you're making a religion, and your religion is fake, the promises you have to make have to be unverifiable. But here, the Torah is saying, you're going to ask me. I'm telling you, don't work for a whole year. Everyone here, everyone at the table, just take off.
Okay.
Don't work for a year. How am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to fill up the car with gas? How am I going to pay my bills? Don't worry. The year before I tell you to take off, I'm going to bless you and you'll have enough for 3 years. So how long would your religion last if it's not true? 6 years. Or 7 years. In the middle of the 7th year, it'd be like, okay, he promised me that I'd have enough. I don't. I guess this is
we all lie.
Fake religion. But from the fact you see the Torah, because it's true, can make such a promise, because no person in their right mind who was making up a religion would ever say, I'm going to make you a promise of something that could be verified within 6 years. So that's just an interesting thing on the psychology of the Torah. Now, Shemitah is very important. We find that it is treated more severely than other negative prohibitions in the Torah. So I'd like to read from a Ramban, Nachmanides, about the importance of Shemitah. So he says, V'hinei, we have a couple cycles that we have 7 with, regarding 7 in the Torah. First, we have the 7 days of the week. We have 6 days where we work, and the 7th day is Shabbos. We also have this cycle of 7 that we're talking about. We have 7 years you can work the field, 6 years you can work the field, and then the 7th day is a Shabbos for the land. So the Ramban connects these two, the 7 days of Shabbos and the 7 years of Shemitah. V'hinei, hayamim remez la'asher bara b'maisa bereishis. The 7 days of the week, they allude to the 6 days of creation, and then the 7th day that Hashem rested. V'hashanim yirmazu la'asher yeh bebrias kol yimei olam. And the 7-year Shemitah cycle, that relates to the 6,000 years of human history. So what does that mean? So there's actually a parallel between the week and human history. The week has 6 days. On the 7th day we rest. The Talmud says that the world as we know it has 6,000 years. What year are we in now? I was at 5783.
A few hundred more.
Right, 5,783 out of 6,000. Now what does it mean that the world has 6,000 years? Now it doesn't mean in the year 6,000 everything's going to go like, okay, we're done, everything gets blown up, the sun explodes or something. That's not what it means. So what the Mekubalim say, that before the year 6,000, Mashiach is going to come. When Mashiach comes, we're going to return to a level of Adam before he sinned, a very high spiritual level. The entire world will be filled with the knowledge of Hashem, and the temple will be rebuilt, and the Yetzer Hara will be destroyed. Now, there's more. That's not it. That's before the year 6,000. After that, the dead will be resurrected, and then after that, the world will be recreated in a more spiritual state, and that's called Olam Haba. That's called the world to come. After that 6,000 years, when we have that time of the world being recreated in a spiritual state, that's where we get our reward, which is the spiritual enjoyment of being close to Hashem. That parallels Shabbos. So there are 6 days of the week, then is Shabbos. So too there are 6,000 years of creation, and then a Shabbos, which is Olam Haba, which is the next world. So really, when you tell someone, they should merit to be in Olam Haba, it doesn't mean where people die now and go to heaven. That's called Olam HaNeshamas. That's something different. Gan Eden or Olam HaNeshamas, correct. But when we say Olam Haba, that means this world recreated in a spiritual sense after people have come back to the dead. So he's saying that the 6 days of the week parallel the creation of the world, and the 6 years of the Shemitah cycle parallel the history of the world in the 6,000 years. Now, he talks about how the Shemitah cycle, Shemitah is treated more severely than other negative prohibitions in the Torah. And then he writes, why is Shemitah so important? Because if a person rejects Shemitah, then you are rejecting the creation of the world and the next world. Because as we said, the Shemitah cycle represents Olam Haba. The 7th year when we rest represents the next world. So if a person doesn't keep Shabbos, why is Shabbos so important? Because Shabbos represents the basis of Judaism, which is there is one God. He created the world and rested on the 7th day. So if a person doesn't keep Shabbos, he rejects that. So it's very serious. Why is Shemitah so serious? Because if a person rejects that, he's saying, I don't believe in this concept that the world has an ultimate purpose where there's going to be Olam Haba and we're going to be recreated in a spiritual form, because this world that we're in now has a purpose. The whole purpose of the world is to bring Mashiach, which happens when we all of humanity recognizes that there's only one God. Yes?
Shemitah is only in Israel?
Yes.
So here is no Shemitah.
Right.
So technically somebody in Israel, they can have land here too for the 7th year. They could export everything from here to Israel or whatever.
Yeah. If they wanted to.
So it's just Israel.
Israel. Because really the ultimate place of the Jewish people, where the Jewish people are supposed to be, is in Israel.
Yeah.
Right. So there are many mitzvos that are dependent on the land.
Right.
Now, right after Shemitah. So what would you think we would talk about here after Shemitah? I would think other agricultural type of laws. Maybe like Greg was saying before, like Truma, Meiser, things like that. But what do we talk about right after Shemitah? It says here, when you sell something to your fellow, or you purchase something for your fellow, al tanu ish es achim. Do not oppress him. What is that talking about? There is a negative commandment in the Torah not to overcharge somebody. Not allowed to overcharge somebody. The rule is if it's less than a sixth, you got to return the money. If it's a sixth, I messed it up. If it's a sixth, you have to return the money. If it's more than a sixth, then it's like the mechira, the sale never happens. So there's a negative prohibition in the Torah to gouge people, to overcharge them.
I got a question for you.
Yes.
Free watchman paid.
If you want anything about Shomer Chinam and Shomer Sacher, Aaron Elbeher is an expert in Shomer Chinam and Shomer Sacher. I'm not kidding. I'm not.
So my question to you is, let's say you're watching the land, you're watching a field, right? You're a farmer. They hired you, and somebody steals the goods. You have a thief. Somebody steals the goods during a Shemitah year. Are you liable?
Well, it's ownerless at that point, so he could take it. It wouldn't belong to anybody. Shomer Chinam and Shomer Sacher is only when you're a watchman. You're watching something.
So you watch. So
right.
If you're watching during Shemitah, there's no liability
for that stuff. But it's only the crops and stuff. If you're watching someone's orange juice, that has nothing to do with Shemitah, or someone's table, and then if you were negligent and you were Shomer Chinam, then you'd be chayav, and things like that. Okay, so Rabbi Ruderman, the founder of my yeshiva, asks, why is this prohibition of overcharging someone, listed right after Shemitah? He says, because it's the same idea behind both of them. Shemitah, as we read, what do you have to observe Shemitah? To not work for a year. You have to have a lot of faith in Hashem. Hashem makes a promise, like we just read. Hashem says, I promise you, don't worry about it, I'm going to take care of you. So a person keeps Shemitah when he has faith in Hashem. A person will not overcharge somebody and cheat in business when he trusts Hashem. Somebody who truly believes that his livelihood comes from God doesn't need to be dishonest, doesn't need to overcharge people, doesn't need to lend with rivets, things like that. He can be an honest person because it doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter if I overcharge him or if I sell him a bad product, because I don't need to do those things because Hashem is going to take care of me either way.
So if you're Hashem or love of Hashem, what's more important?
I think they're both important. I don't know what's more important. I don't know.
So the fear of Shamayim or fear of Hashem? Or
Hashem.
Same thing.
Yeah.
So basically, if somebody that's fearing of Hashem, they will behave a certain way.
Yes.
So they will put their faith before making money.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, that's the lesson we're learning here. That once we trust in Hashem, we don't need to resort to dishonest practices in order to make a living. So Rav Gedalia Shor says that the faith that we have in God in the seventh year, when we're not working at all and we see, look, I'm not working in the seventh year and I have enough to support myself. Things work out. He says, we have to take that faith in the years when we are working. The other 6 years, a person could think, well, I'm working very hard in the fields. I'm getting up at 5 a.m. to milk the cows and do whatever with the chickens, and I'm not a farmer, so I don't know what farmers do, but I imagine something like that. So they would think it's my own hard work that I became successful and that I was able to make a living. Gedalia Shor says, no, take the lesson that you learned in the seventh year, that you were able to survive in the seventh year when you were doing nothing because of Hashem. So too, when you were putting in effort in the 6 years of actually working, really your success came from Hashem. And there's two things in Judaism. There's emunah and bitachon. Emunah is the faith in Hashem, the faith in God, and bitachon is putting it into practice. Well, it's actually activating that emunah. So you're right, it is a higher level in that sense. But a person could say, I believe in God, and you could say all day, I believe that Hashem runs the world. But then when it comes to it, he doesn't put it into practice. The Chazon Ish writes an example. He says you can have a guy, and he always talks about how much he trusts God, he trusts Hashem. And let's say he has a restaurant, and all of a sudden there's one kosher restaurant in town. Halavai, we had one kosher restaurant in town, but he's one kosher restaurant in town.
You can open it.
Yeah. I'm just good at bringing the food from Lakewood. I'm not good at cooking it or selling it.
You don't bring your father brings it.
That's true. I don't even bring it.
Right.
My father brings it. There you go. I'm not even good at that. You have a guy who's got the only kosher restaurant in town, and he always talks about trusting in Hashem. His business is going well. I trust in Hashem, trust in Hashem. And then somebody moves here from New York, Kedar Kambakodesh, and he opens up another kosher restaurant across the street. And all of a sudden he starts saying, this guy, who does he think he is? He's opening up another kosher restaurant, and he starts speaking Lashon Hara about him, talking bad-mouthing him. Oh, this guy, his food is really, he uses inferior products. It's not good. You shouldn't eat there. He's a bad guy. You can't trust him. He uses undocumented immigrants as his workers. He doesn't pay his taxes, and he starts bad-mouthing him. So this guy, who was talking about emunah and faith, when it comes down to it, he doesn't put it into practice because he doesn't have bitachon. If a person who has bitachon will say, you know what, it doesn't matter there's a competitor across the street. The fact is that God is going to be the one who gives me my sustenance no matter what. My Rosh Yeshiva told me a story about a fellow in Bnei Brak. He had the only print shop in Bnei Brak for years and years. Printing. Back in the day, Aaron, before the internet, people used to print things. Like newspapers and books. People used to read books. People used to have invitations. They used to print invitations and print newspapers and things like that. So
after my day.
So there was one print shop in Bnei Brak, and what happens? Somebody opens up around the corner from him another print shop. So this guy walks over to the print shop the first day. He says, "Hi, I have the competing print shop. I just want to welcome you to the community, and if you need any help, let me know." I said, "I'll give you. I can tell you the best customers, the best suppliers." Because he knew it doesn't matter. So what? There's another guy here. My sustenance is coming from Hashem, so it doesn't matter what anybody else does. Now, it's easy to say it. To put it into practice is a little hard. Now, to talk about other people doing it's one thing. But when you're in a job and then you feel like, well, someone's competing with me, it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lifetime of work and a lot of practice to put this attitude into practice. But the way that we get to that, first of all, is by learning about it and constantly learning about it, because it's something that needs to be repeated, and also is by putting it into practice. When we don't react in those situations, you have a choice. I have a competitor. Okay, now I could badmouth him and speak Lashon Hara, which is against the Torah, to improve my business, or I could keep quiet because I trust in Hashem. Every time we keep quiet and trust in Hashem, that makes the bitachon part of us, makes the faith in Hashem a part of us.
Hold on. Emunah is faith.
Emunah is faith, and bitachon is acting on that faith, putting that faith into practice. All right? Now, the Chazon Ish
One
says...
is thought and one's action?
That's a good way to say it, but I mean they're both really thoughts also. But that's a good way to say it. It's putting it into practice. Now, okay. The Chazon Ish says now he says the people make a mistake. They think bitachon is that I think everything's going to work out my way. If I just believe strong enough that everything's going to work out my way, it'll work out. If I believe that I'm going to win the lottery, I'm going to win the lottery. Chazon Ish says that's not what bitachon means. Bitachon means is that I truly believe that God is the one in control. It might not work out the way I want. Bad things that appear to be bad, that appear I am suffering, it just appears to be happenstance, to be circumstances. But the belief is that Hashem is the one doing it, He's the one in control, and therefore obviously there is a reason. Now, with that merit, when a person lives with that idea, it serves as a schus, as a merit, that things should work out well for the person. Just like prayer, right? If a person could have a certain decree that bad things are going to happen to him, let's say a person sinned. So bad things are going to happen to him. Why? Because Hashem's doing it really for his benefit, because He needs to erase those sins from his neshama. But what a person can do is do tshuva and pray. And that tshuva and prayer will make it that he doesn't need to go through that suffering to erase those sins. Prayer serves as a schus, or a person is sick and he needs to get healthy, so he prays to Hashem. That serves as a merit that he could get better. Had he not prayed, he might not have gotten better. The same thing with this belief. Living with the belief that God is in control serves as a schus, serves as a merit that things will work out and that the person will get better and things will work out like that.
It happened to me this past year.
What happened?
I had a new job a year ago, and it turned out a terrible job. I was stressed. It was terrible. And I was, saying, it's like, I'm going to try to find a job. It didn't happen, and I got laid off, right? They got rid of me. But I said, Gamzu Latova, right? And I really, truly believed that this happened for a reason. And 6 weeks later, I found another job that I'm in love with. And I wouldn't have if, like I prayed to Hashem to let things work out, and it did. I didn't know the way it was going to work out.
Right.
He got rid of my job for me, because I didn't quit. He just said, like...
Could be this chus of your bitachon that you got the new job.
Right.
Maybe that's why, the davening.
Right.
It's interesting, as an aside, the psychologists say that one of the ways they tell people to like calm down, or like they find that when people believe their lives are controlled by a higher power, that helps to calm a person. Now, we don't need that because we see it's true spiritually, but just the fact that God made a human being built into his psychology that believing in him will relax him and calm him down is very interesting. Right? It's a question on the atheists, meaning or evolutionists. Why should human beings have evolved the need to have a feeling that a higher power is taking care of them? Like, how did that make them more able to survive than a being that didn't have that? I would think on the contrary, someone who didn't believe there was a higher power would be fighting harder and he would be more fit than the other. But that's an aside. Okay. Just a couple things on the end part, because it's a double parsha. Feel free to leave, no pressure. Just take more food with you if you go.
No, that's good. I have 7 minutes.
Okay. Oh, okay. There's some fast. Okay, 26:21. We read about the curses that happen if we don't follow the Torah. And one of the things it says, 26:21. If you go with Mikeri, I'll read that in English in a second. I'll punish you 7 times according to your sin. So, Keri means you go with me. Here they translate it as casually, but it means you go and you live a life where you think everything is just by chance, everything is a coincidence, everything is happenstance. Such a life, if Hashem tells us as the Jewish people, if we live like that, then He's going to punish us. And this is the same idea that we're saying. The way we react to different circumstances in our lives, we have 2 choices. We're going to say, okay, God is doing this to me. He's in control. Now, what do I need to fix? What should I be doing now? Or we could say, wow, this horrible thing happened to me. What a coincidence. Okay, I'm just going to keep doing what I was doing. So, actually the Overcharging here says that if a person treats God's punishments as happenstance, Hashem's going to make more punishments, and then it will be less clear that the punishments are happening from Hashem, and it will seem even more by coincidence. Meaning, the first one, if you would have thought about it a little bit, you could see how, I broke my leg, and oh wow, yesterday I was kicking my friend in the shins for no reason. It must be that Hashem's punishing me for doing that. And then you could react that way, or you could say, wow, what a coincidence, I broke my leg, and then this happens, and that happens, and they're not even connected to what he did. It said it will just keep happening and happening. And the Rambam has very harsh words for those who react that way. I'm not going to read the whole Rambam, I'll just summarize. He says that there's a positive mitzvah to cry out to Hashem when bad things happen. Right? Horrible things are happening in Israel now, and you just read what these psychos like Rashida Tlaib in Congress are saying, and these anti-Semites, and these supposedly rational people that follow them, that seem to think it's fine to rain down missiles on innocent men, women, and children. Right, but they're Jews, so obviously they're not innocent according to them. So we're living in this insane time. These horrible things are happening. He says there's a positive commandment in the Torah to cry out to Hashem. And he says if somebody doesn't do that, doesn't cry out to Hashem, but he just says, you know what? Things like that, this happen. Things happen, bad things happen, countries have wars, people fight. There's no rhyme or reason. He says this is cruelty to react this way. Why? Because it causes people to stick to their evil deeds. The whole point of suffering and going through scary situations is Hashem wants to wake us up, to correct our actions, to get us to pause and think for a second. Are there areas of my life that I could be improving on? And then to actually improve those areas. But if we don't take that reaction and we just say, what a coincidence, I'm going to keep acting the same way. That's why it's so bad. Okay, just one more quick thing I would like to share. That was at the beginning of Behar-Bechukosai. This is, as I mentioned, the Tochacha, it's the rebuke given to the Jewish people that if you listen, Hashem says, if you listen to what I have to say, good things will happen. If you don't listen to what I have to say, not so good things will happen. It says like this, Im Behar-Bechukosai telechu, if you follow in my statutes, v'imot mitzvosai tishmeru, and you observe my commandments. So It says, observe commandments and follow my statutes. What are statutes? Rashi says that you should be a Meilim b'Torah, that you should work hard in Torah study. If you work hard in Torah study and you follow my commandments, then you'll be successful. It's interesting. It doesn't just say, you think it's enough. Keep my commandments and then everything will go well. That's not what he says. He says, keep my commandments and work hard in Torah study. And it doesn't just say study Torah. It says work hard. Amal. Amal is Lashon, phraseology of hard work and effort. And Rav Ruderman pointed out, I think many point this out, that we read this right before Shavuos, when we got the Torah, because this is the time of year where we rededicate ourselves to studying Torah. And he pointed something out which you don't really think about. When I picture someone working hard in Torah, I'm picturing a rabbi over a book sweating and just trying to figure something out, which is true. That is amal, that is amelus, that is working hard. But he says, you know what else is amelus? Getting in your car and driving to shul to hear a shir. That's also working hard. That's also putting in effort to study Torah. Or walking from here to there to that bookshelf to get a book because you want to look something up to see what the Torah has to say. Even that is a mitzvah to do. Every little thing that we do is considered toiling in Torah. So we should think about it. So everyone should pat themselves on the back that just the fact that you got in the car and drove here. I know Darren usually comes and he'll bike here like 7 miles to come. But every effort that you put in is being amal b'Torah, is fulfilling this positive thing that says at the beginning of the parsha. My Rosh Yeshiva used to mention, now there's something called the Kovitz Meforshim, where you're learning, Aaron and I are learning Bava Kama in school. So there's a Kovitz Meforshim on Bava Kama, which means it has all the commentaries in one little book. It's not so little, actually, it's a pretty big book with all the commentaries on Bava Kama. So you just have that book at your seat, and anytime you need something, you can look it up. But back in the old days, they didn't have that. So every time you wanted to look something up, you would have to get out of your seat and go to the bookshelf. So my Rosh Yeshiva said, we don't have that anymore. That was putting in effort for Torah, and we actually lost that mitzvah a little bit. That doesn't mean you have to purposely make your life difficult and learn by candlelight so that it's harder to learn by candlelight. That's not the point. But there's definitely plenty of ways we can put in effort in learning Torah, given even with our current modern conveniences. Okay, so just to summarize, the main idea, being a Jew, this is what being a Jew is all about. That Hashem is in control. Life has a purpose. All of humanity is going to completion. That's represented by Shemitah and by Shabbos. And when we react the other way, when we think, sometimes it's the Yetzer Hara, right? Don't think we're going to walk out of here and we're always going to believe everything happens and we'll feel it in our bones. Everything is from Hashem. It's the Yetzer Hara, evil inclination. He's going to tell us, come on, it's coincidence, right? It's going to happen. I promise. It's going to happen. That's the Yetzer Hara trying to get us. And as the Rambam says, when that happens, it's going to get worse and worse, because the reason Hashem sends us difficulties and suffering is to make us correct our actions. So in the schutz of the protection of the people in Israel now, let's try to correct anything in our lives, and I think specifically since Shavuos is coming, working a little harder in Torah would be a great thing for all of us. So maybe next week everyone can walk here.
I did walk from the parking lot.
Boom! There you go. You know what? You eat a lot of yapchik, it's going to get harder and harder to walk from the parking lot.